The Assembly is now in session. Assemblymember Holden notices the absence of a quorum. The sergeants at arms will prepare the chamber, bring in the absent members, and the clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Christina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurman, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
Good morning. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand up for the prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by our guest chaplain, Assemblymember Brown. Assemblymember Brown.
Lord, your grace sustains us throughout difficult times and supplies our needy hearts with encouragement. Give us wisdom for the work that is before us. Calm our attitudes. Bless us with the strength to do the work of this new day. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to please remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Join Assemblymember Irwin as she leads us in the pledge.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, June 3rd, 2015. The Assembly met at 10 a.m. Honorable Kevin Mullen speaks.
Mr. Holden moves and Ms. Waldron seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Moving now to motions and resolutions. For absences today for legislative business, Assemblymember Dodd. Moving to procedural motions, Mr. Holden, you're recognized for your motions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly Members Chu and Cooley to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Assemblymember Eggman, Hadley, and Levine to speak and adjourn in memory today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, I request unanimous consent to re-refer the following bill to committee. Senate Bill 225 Wykowski from the Natural Resources Committee to the Rules Committee. Senate Bill 789 Wykowski from the Transportation Committee to the Rules Committee.
The clerk will so note.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move to guest introductions.
Top right.
I would like to first recognize Assemblymember Cooper for your guest introduction. Assemblymember Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm happy to recognize from my district the Galt Youth Commission, who are observing today's session from the gallery. These high school students serve as a resource and advocate to the Galt City Council on teen issues while championing community service. They meet regularly with the mayor and city council on issues affecting Galt and are a great example of youth leadership in California. Please help me in recognizing the Galt Youth Commission.
Our second guest introduction will be by Assemblymember Cooley. Assemblymember Cooley.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I want to introduce here on the floor my guest from the Del Paso Country Club, Mr. Del Spector, who is the chair for the U.S. Senior Open Tournament, which will start later this month out at Del Paso Country Club, and Mr. Lou Blanes, former Sacramento County Sheriff, longtime colleague of mine in the community, who is the president of the Del Paso Country Club. The Del Paso Country Club will be home to the 36th U.S. Open later this month. More than 125,000 fans are expected to watch the world's best golfers over the age of 50 compete for a national championship. This club has held several USGA events, including the U.S. Women Amateurs, the U.S. Women Senior Amateur, and the U.S. Women Open. This will, however, be the first time the U.S. Senior Open is being held in Northern California. We are all very honored that the Del Paso Country Club, the oldest private golf course in the Sacramento Valley, was chosen to host this prestigious event. Thank you very much.
Members, we are going to move to business on the daily file. Business on the daily file, second reading. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 277 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Is there any objection to granting Mr. Williams unanimous consent for reconsideration on file item number 2, AB 356? Seeing and hearing none, reconsideration is granted. File item 2, AB 356, is ordered to the inactive file. Moving to Assembly, third reading. File items 3 through 6 pass and retain. We are moving to file item number 7. That's ACR 81. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 81 by Assemblymember David Chu and others relative to Philippine Independence Day.
Mr. David Chu, you may open on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Colleagues, mabuhay. I rise to present ACR 81, which celebrates the Filipino Day of Independence on June the 12th. We are fortunate to live in a state with tremendous diversity, and I'm proud to have some of our state's historic and significant Filipino communities within my district. The historic Manila town, which was the site of the fall of the International Hotel, which sparked Asian American activism in our country, as well as Soma, Pilipinas. There are 3.5 million Filipino Americans living in our country, and Filipinos represent the largest API population in our state with 1.5 million residents. In our country, our Filipino American community has made tremendous contributions from healthcare and business to literature and the arts to our country's military defense and, of course, our food. In California, Filipino agricultural laborers shaped labor history by helping to lead the farm worker movement that sparked massive social change in the 1960s and 70s and led to better wage and living conditions for all workers. ACR 81 celebrates our Filipino American community and its rich history, and I encourage our colleagues to celebrate with us. And with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Members, please give your attention to Ms. Chang. Ms. Chang, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of ACR 81. The countless individuals that have moved to California from the Philippines have shared with us their rich culture and history and made significant contributions to our diverse culture. I would like to thank the author for introducing this measure and urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Mr. Bonta, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm honored to join Assemblymember Chu in authoring this year's Philippine Independence Day resolution. And I'd like to commemorate this important date by highlighting what I believe Philippine Independence Day at its core is about. The fight for freedom, liberty, self-determination, and independence. In short, the fight for justice. This fight for justice is something that has been part of the Filipino community for ages, and that spirit lives on today. From the fight for independence from Spanish colonial rule to our Filipino World War II veterans' fight for global freedom and liberty, to the fight for fair working conditions, dignity, and respect in the fields of California, led by great Filipino leaders Larry Itliong, Philip Vera Cruz, Pete Velasco, and Andy Imutan, among others, to the fight at the International Hotel for affordable housing and tenants' rights, to the KDP's anti-martial law efforts and battle against the human rights abuses of the Ferdinand Marcos dictatorship, to the People's Power, or EDSA, revolution. That hunger for justice has resulted in transformative change and the betterment of lives time and time again. And as we work in all of our communities throughout this great state for the betterment of all of California, I encourage us to remain committed to this same pursuit of justice. Members, I urge you, aye vote. Salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. Mr. Harper, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to recognize the friendship and the partnership of the people of the United States and the people of the Philippines. My great-grandfather went from California to serve in the military for fight in the Spanish-American War for Philippines. And also, my great-grandfather continued to remain there, and my grandfather was born in the Philippines. We have such a great partnership, such a great friendship, and I urge my colleagues to continue to promote the relationship between the Philippines and the United States for mutual freedom and mutual liberty.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Seeing no other members seeking recognition, Mr. Chu, you may close if you wish.
Thank you, colleagues, for your comments. Colleagues, at this time, I respectfully urge your aye vote and ask that the first roll call be open for co-authors.
Mr. Chu is asking the first roll be open for co-authors. With that, the clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors on ACR 81. Co-authors adding on ACR 81. The clerk will close the roll. There are 70 co-authors added on ACR 81. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Chu, back to you for your guest introductions related to this resolution.
Thank you, colleagues. Today we have a number of distinguished guests from our Filipino-American community. I'd like to introduce the Philippine Consulate General and his delegation who've joined us in the back today. I'd like to first recognize Consul General Henry Bencerto, Deputy Consul General Jaime Ramon Escalon, Consul Reginald Burnaby, our Vice Consul Carolyn Monastrial, our Colonel Antonio Mendoza, Protocol Officer Leon Lagarta, and our Tourism Director Pura Molintas. Please join me in welcoming them to our chamber today. And colleagues, I'll just note we will have a reception at 10 a.m. in room 317, and please join us for some light refreshments and food. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we are going to move to the consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read the second-day consent calendar.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 72 by Assemblymember Gibson relative to American Stroke Month.
The clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 70, no 0. The consent calendar is adopted.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 53.
Ayes 70, no 0.
And Senate Concurrent Resolution 49.
Ayes 70, no 0. Colleagues, at this time we'll now move to announcements and adjournments in memory. The following members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjourn in memory. Ask if everyone, if you could please quiet your conversations for the adjournments. Thank you. With that, I would like to recognize Assemblymember Eggman for the first adjournment.
Good morning, members. Today I rise to say that we adjourn in memory of my friend Jack Munoz, who was a longtime construction worker, a leader in our local. He was a business manager for Labor 73. He was a member of the North Valley Labor Fed. He was a father. He was a grandfather. He was a TO. He was a friend. He was a biker. He was a badass. He was all of the above. Jack was one of those guys who would light up a room when he walked in. He was born in 1961, the same year as me, so we were always very close. And he lost his very brief, very hard battle with cancer last week. We laid him to rest this week to a grand procession of people coming from all over the state to pay their respects to my friend, Jack Kolpak Munoz, and all of us in the city of Stockton and the building trades around the state will forever miss him, his energy, his spirit, and his, "Hey, OG, what's up?" I ask that we adjourn his memory.
Thank you, Ms. Eggman. Our next adjournment will be by Mr. Hadley.
Good morning, members. Today I rise to adjourn in memory of my friend David Rondero. David lived in Corona and served as Vice President of Keenan and Associates in the Property and Casualty Division, working with local cities and municipalities throughout California. His career in risk management and insurance spanned over 20 years, most of which with him serving local governments. David took pride helping local governments save money on their insurance, claims, and risk management costs so that they could use those savings to help their communities, our communities. He was an integral member of the community and a pillar of his profession, and it has often been said that David not only understood community and public service, but he lived it. He was very active with the California League of Cities, serving on the League of Cities Employee Relations Steering Committee and the Public Agencies Risk Management Association Planning Committee. David was the product of an immigrant family, a Portuguese family. He was very proud of his heritage and proud to be an American. He is survived by his wife, Anne, and their 3 daughters, Gabrielle, Grace, and Faith, and their son, Josh. He will be greatly missed, and I ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Our final adjourn will be by Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to ask that we adjourn in memory of Mervyn Field, the Dean of California Polling, who passed away Monday in Marin County at the age of 94. I'd like to share with you what has already been said about Merv Field. On Monday, after Mr. Field's passing, Mark DiCamillo, the Field Poll's current director, wrote, "Mervyn Field defined California politics and was an influential voice on the national political scene for more than 65 years. He was the man who explained California to Californians and the nation." The same day, CalBuzz published the following: "Thoughtful and civil, cordial and cultured, affable and warm, Merv Field was, quite simply, a great man." Last year, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi paid tribute to Field. She said, "Merv is a walking encyclopedia of California political knowledge, and for nearly 7 decades, the Field Poll has served as the gold standard of opinion research, information, and analysis." In 1984, the San Jose Mercury News called Field the most cited source in the world on what Californians think, love, vote, hate, fear, eat, drink, and smoke. In 1986, a Capitol columnist wrote, "At this point in the campaign season, Field may be the most powerful figure in the state." In 1999, the California Journal said this about Field: "Over the past half century, Field and his poll have defined California politics." Field was an avid tennis and bridge player and an accomplished chess player. He was an aficionado of jazz and stand-up comedy. If he had any regrets in an otherwise rich and full life, it may be that he never fulfilled his oft-expressed wish that he had become a stand-up comedian. In semi-retirement, he conscientiously wrote an items column for The Arc, a Tiburon weekly. He offered a quirky combination of bad jokes, funny koans, and statistical oddities he discovered in his reading. Merv Field was born on March 11th, 1921, in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the 5th child of Isidore Field and Yeti Siegel, who emigrated from Eastern Europe. He was married to Marilyn Hammer for almost 50 years until her death in 2005. He leaves a daughter, Nancy of Oakland, a son, David of San Rafael, and a daughter, Melanie, a son-in-law, John LaQuadra, and a grandson, Dante LaQuadra of Novato. My thoughts are with his family and friends and the loyal team he leaves behind at the field pole, who will proudly carry on his legacy. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Members, please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Moving now to announcements, we have two. The first is I'm ordering the desk to remain open until 5 p.m. on Friday, June the 12th. And my second announcement, I think, will make everyone happy. The scheduling session has changed. We are no longer on call for floor session tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. On Friday, June the 12th, no floor session, no check-in session. On Saturday, June the 13th, no session. Sunday, June the 14th, no session. Monday, June the 15th, we have floor session at 1:30 p.m. And one final announcement, members, there will be a caucus meeting immediately following session in the members' lounge. And with that, all other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves. Ms. Waldron seconds that this House stands adjourned until Monday, June the 15th at noon or upon call of the Speaker. Quorum call is lifted.